This is Behind the Headlines, with behind-the-scenes analysis on issues affecting Pennsylvanians, sponsored by the Susquehanna Valley Center for Public Policy. Now, here's your host.
Hi, welcome to a new edition of Behind the Headlines. I'm Charlie Greenewald, Senior Fellow with Susquehanna Valley Center for Public Policy, and I'm joined as usual by my co-host, Maura Donnelly. Maura, welcome.
Hello, Charlie.
Hi, it's nice to see you.
Nice to see you too.
Why, while we were gone this summer for a little bit, we find that Pennsylvania had a great loss. Pennsylvania, of course, lost what many regarded as the finest governor we've ever had in William Scranton. William Scranton had passed on. Of course, he was in his 90s and had lived a glorious life. Of course, a former congressman, former governor, former presidential candidate, former U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, a great statesman and a great philanthropist. And he will be missed, and we say hello to all these friends and family, and our prayers have been with you. So we can only hope for governors in the future that are that good.
That well respected, yes.
Yeah, and speaking of public servants that can make a difference, we are very fortunate to have with us today probably the most, the most talked about and the most formidable, in many ways, politician on the state level in Pennsylvania at the current time, and that is our new Attorney General, Kathleen Kane, the first woman and the first Democrat to be elected as Attorney General. General, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So nice of you to join us today.
Nice to see you. Thank you.
Could you tell us a little bit, some of our viewers might be seeing you for the first time on television, and just wondered if you could tell us a little bit about your background, where you came from, and how you rose to become the first woman and the first Democrat elected in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania in the Attorney General position.
Well, thank you for asking, and thank you for inviting me here. I find it hard to believe no one has seen all those campaign commercials. But
You're probably right. You're probably right.
But I am born and raised in Scranton, Pennsylvania, and specifically West Scranton. I went to public schools, and I put myself through the University of Scranton and then Temple Law School. I lived in Philadelphia for a number of years. I worked for a large firm there. But actually, after a couple of years, I just felt this was not what I wanted to do with the rest of my life, and I was only 28 years old at the time. So I moved back home. I took a job with the Lackawanna County District Attorney's Office, and I loved every second of being a prosecutor. I specialized in child sexual abuse prosecutions as well as white-collar crime, elder abuse, and had extensive experience before the grand jury. And I felt like that really prepared me of all of the terrible things that I have seen in my career and all of the hurt people that you see across this Commonwealth. I think it really prepared me for the campaign and really prepared me to be the Attorney General. And I wanted to run because my mother always said over and over and over, if you want something done right, just get up and do it yourself. Don't wait for other people to do it for you. And that really resonated with me when I saw, I felt like politics was taking too much of a role in our government and, political ambitions and things like that. And I just felt that that was wrong. You need to make decisions based upon the law, based upon the facts, and who cares about your own political ambition? So I said to my husband, I think what might be a good time to run for Attorney General. And he jumped right in from the very beginning. You'd be good at that, you love that, I'm behind you all the way. And it was cast in stone from there on.
So he never said, are you out of your mind?
No. Even to this day, he's still not saying, are you out of your mind? Some of the publicity we could do without, of course.
Absolutely.
It's hard for people like us, the scrutiny to be just thrown into the spotlight. And sometimes my boys get a little disappointed or upset, but I tell them it's okay, I'm okay. And this is what we do. We talk about things. It's a democracy. People have different opinions, and that's a good thing.
Great. Now, I know that you've probably did a lot of research and work and spent a lot of time preparing for the position and walking in. But tell us, what was one of your biggest surprises when you first got in there that you just didn't anticipate?
The budget.
The
budget for the office was the biggest surprise. When we got in, we were told, we're a couple million behind. The budget has been cut. We've been operating in a deficit for a number of years. When we started digging deep and we saw just how bad the budget situation was in that office, it was shocking to me, because I believe that law enforcement is the most basic function of government. We have to protect our streets. We have to protect our people. That's what we started out doing. That's what our taxes started out being for, as well as roads and bridges and things like that. But I was shocked to see what a skeleton crew we were working on as well. We have a couple hundred people working in the office, but for example, we have a contract division, as you well know from the lottery contract. We receive 5,000 contracts a year that we review. We have 2 lawyers in the office who review all of those contracts. It's an incredible, incredible amount. But our people, what I was most surprised about and what I loved, and to this day I'm thankful, they are so dedicated. They work because they love that job. They don't care whether they're working for a Republican or a Democrat. It doesn't matter to them. And we have become one team very, very quickly, and I'm very proud of that fact.
Oh, that's great.
Yes.
Are you redefining the role of Attorney General? There's some pundits who think that you might be. How would you respond to them?
No, I wouldn't say I'm redefining the role. I'm using the responsibilities that are given to me pursuant to the Commonwealth Attorneys Act. We have responsibilities in civil law. We have responsibilities in criminal law and public protection and consumer protection. We must use them all. That's our job. You can't pick out one or the other. You can't just only focus on criminal law or civil law and call it a day. We have a very large responsibility. I focus on everything. I operate within the boundaries of the law and within the boundaries of my responsibility, and I just get things done, that's all. I think that what we're seeing now is me just getting things done quicker because I move at 90 miles an hour, and I think that that's a good thing.
Well, are there any areas that you came upon that you thought were being underserved, or that you really want to put a little bit more emphasis on within the Attorney General's office?
Well, I won't go back and talk about whether, a particular Attorney General was underserving the public or anything. That isn't my interest.
I didn't ask that.
You'd be a good prosecutor. I'm going to tell you what my emphasis are, and then I'll leave it to you to determine whether it's been underserved in the past. But my emphasis is on, we have neighborhoods that are not livable anymore. We have people who are begging for help to get their neighborhoods back to where it's safe for their kids to play on the playgrounds. That disgusts me, number one, that we have let it get that far, but it also empowers me and gives me a tremendous responsibility to get there and do something. When I took the oath of office on January 15th, I told the people of those neighborhoods, we did not forget you. It doesn't have to be Philadelphia or Pittsburgh. It could be the smaller towns in between, but we're coming there to help you. And we are on the ground. We are in their neighborhoods. We have put together a comprehensive, and I think a national model of how to deal with the crimes in these particular neighborhoods, but not just how to deal with them in a task force. Not just taking some drug dealers off the streets, because there's 20 more behind him or her where that one came from. We have got to have a saturated, comprehensive approach. We've got to be there. We need to work with the local police. We work with the DEA, the FBI, the U.S. Attorney's Office. We work with the AGs across the nation. We also work with the schools and the neighborhoods to say, okay, this is our problem. It's not just law enforcement. It's all of our problems. We are going to come in and we are going to saturate, and we're going to make sure that we leave this in a better position. We leave your neighborhoods safer. You can go outside. You can go to that new business down the street, because this is a matter of public safety. It's also a matter of economics. Businesses cannot survive. We can't have jobs if no one comes because they're too afraid to go down to Main Avenue anytime past 7 o'clock, right? Mm-hmm. So this is, I think we have our mobile street crimes unit, which the legislature, thankfully, and I'm grateful to them, funded, and that's on the ground. It's operating now. We're going to make a difference. Child predator unit, just in the past 7 months, we have tripled the amount of arrests from last year. Last year there was 19 arrests. We're up over 60 arrests so far. Wow. And there's almost an arrest every single day. But we have a tremendous problem here in Pennsylvania, and we are dealing with it. And again, the legislature saw that. They gave us the money to deal with the child predator problem in Pennsylvania. We added more agents. We have better software to track and to find. And we are really, I think our unit is doing a great job. And consumer protection. Consumer protection irritates me because, we're regular people. We work. If you're getting scammed, or you find those charges on your cell phone bill or whatever bill, you have no idea. You don't have 4 hours to sit on the phone to say, why am I being charged $5 extra every single month? But when 12 million people in Pennsylvania are being charged $5 every month, that's a lot of money, right? Crime can't pay. So I want the people to know that we're the ones who are looking out for them. We're the ones who are going to make sure that they're not scammed. They are the ones, the people need to go to work. You go to work. We'll handle it for you. We're going to be the ones watching out for you. And I think that that is a tremendous area that people get ripped off in. And I don't like it. They don't like it. And we're doing something about it.
Well, the other side of the coin there would be, have there been areas that your predecessors have overemphasized?
You can never overemphasize. You can't. When it comes to the law, you can never overemphasize. People can never be too safe. They can never be too protected against scams. Our elderly are scammed all the time. Our veterans are scammed all the time. There's so much work out there. I wish we could say that we'd ever have an opportunity to overemphasize, but we won't.
We saw recently that the U.S. Attorney General Holder sort of had some interesting views on mandatory sentencing and changes that they're making or looking into making on the federal level. What are your thoughts on these recent pronouncements?
Mandatory minimums have always been in question for a number of years anyway. I think part of the criticism of them is that they target particular minorities. If that's the case, then that's a real problem. The law is blind. You can never target any person because of the color of their skin or their religion.
The law should be blind.
Anything. The law should be blind, and it's up to us to make sure that it is in each and every turn. If they're finding that mandatory minimums then only target, or the reason they're put in place is to target minorities, then that's a problem. On the other hand, when you're prosecuting drug crimes and you have a repeat offender, the mandatory minimums sometimes come into use because you've got to teach them a lesson that, we're serious. So we always took it on a case-by-case basis, and it's the prosecutor's discretion as to whether to invoke the mandatory minimum or not. And I think that if it's a case of racial targeting, then yes, they need to really be looked at. We all need to be on the same page with it. If it's a case of making sure that repeat offenders are held accountable for their actions, then you need to use your best discretion. And that's exactly why you need to make sure that no politics come into play in a prosecutor's office.
Well, do you agree that it really has mostly resulted in just overcrowding of the prison system?
The problem is how do you say that the prisons are overcrowded and we're not going to make arrests anymore? The opposite of that is, we can't let them go. Decriminalizing isn't the answer. Not making the arrest isn't the answer. I think the answer lies more with being smarter on crime. When we have drug abusers, or we have alcohol abusers, or people with mental health problems, we need to deal with the core of their problem, because we throw somebody with a mental health problem who's, say, robbed a convenience store because of their mental health issues. We throw them in jail. We know their minimum's coming up. We know they still have mental health problems. I think it's irresponsible then to allow them to go back out onto the street. We know they're going to reoffend because we haven't gotten to the core of their problem. I think that we can be smarter on crime, which may then reduce the prison population, but more importantly, reduces crime. We don't want victims.
Okay. We want to take a break here, and we'll be right back in just a few minutes. We'll be back with the Attorney General of Pennsylvania right after this.
Behind the Headlines is brought to you as a public service by the Pennsylvania Business Council, envisioning a commonwealth in which residents enjoy a very high quality of life in sustainable communities. The Council works aggressively to define key long-term policy strategies and solutions that make the Commonwealth more competitive, creating and sustaining a better Pennsylvania. Additional underwriting provided by the Worrell Corporation Foundation, based in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, by the Edward H. and Jeannie Arnold Foundation, and by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business. Behind the Headlines is also supported as a public service by Daily Underwriters of America, a better way for truck insurance, and by Penn Waste, your best local choice for your waste removal and recycling needs. Behind the Headlines is a production of the Susquehanna Valley Center for Public Policy, a nonpartisan, nonprofit research organization helping Pennsylvania build a brighter future.
Hi, welcome back to the second segment of Behind the Headlines. Of course, today, Maura and I are fortunate enough to have for the entire show the Attorney General of Pennsylvania, Kathleen Kane, and we're so grateful for her appearance here today. We wanted to start out this second half of the show by asking you about one of the more interesting and I think more incendiary situations that had developed since you've been in the office, and that is, of course, Governor Corbett had decided that he was going to privatize the management of the lottery, and he was going to give this management over to a British firm by the name of Camelot. In fact, we see in the news constantly that their contract has been extended for another week, for another month, and this keeps on going on and on. And you ruled that this was unconstitutional, that the governor has to have the state legislature on board for something like this. And we were just wondering if you could talk about that and talk about what's the status of this whole attempt to privatize the management of the Lottery of Pennsylvania.
Right. First, let me tell you that our job is to review any contract, any state contract for form and legality. My chief deputy of the Contracts Division, has been in the office for 26 years. He served numerous attorneys general. When we received this contract, that's exactly what we did. We went through it line by line for form and legality, and what we found out is that it was unconstitutional because it usurped the legislature's authority to privatize any state function, which the lottery is. We also found that by adding Keno in the form and manner that it was added violated the Lottery Act as well as the State Gaming Act, and then that it also violated the indemnification clause of the Constitution. So it was strictly a legal decision for us. And as you well know, then we declined the contract. Right now, my understanding is that it still may be in the works. We don't know. We don't get involved in policy or negotiating the contract. We just wait until it comes back across our desk, and then we take a fresh look at it as we would any contract.
Okay, thank you.
Well, according to Twitter feeds here, it's just moments ago extended one more time.
Oh, well, you know more than I do. Thank you for the information.
Oh, my.
Sure. I've been fortunate to teach some classes from groups from China, and I spent a lot of time actually doing antitrust law. Our antitrust law in the United States goes back to the late 1800s, and China's really just sort of gearing up on antitrust, but they've been fascinated by the recent announcement of the merger between American Airlines and U.S. Airways. And in the class that I taught recently, we spent a lot of time talking about whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. So you've recently stepped into this, the fray,
yes.
And we're apparently going to have a hearing or a legal hearing early in the spring. But can you tell us a little bit about the position that the Attorney General has taken with this merger?
Sure. Well, we are responsible for enforcing the antitrust provisions. And antitrust occurs when a number of competitors get together and then they form one conglomerate. When that happens, our job is to protect the consumers. Our job is to make sure that when competition decreases, prices then always increase. And who does that affect? That affects me and you. That affects everyone who goes up to the terminal. It affects airfares. It affects baggage fees. It affects change fees, standby fees, food fees, everything that you're now being charged from the airlines. When competition is reduced, prices go up, and we're the ones left holding the bag. So that's what our job was. We saw that through the mergers in the past, as well as this merger, that it would seriously reduce competition, and it would seriously reduce the amount of services that are offered to the consumer. That's why we got involved, and we also got involved because we have a major hub in Philadelphia for U.S. Air. We wanted to make sure that, as in typical in the past, when the airlines merged, when U.S. Air merged with American West in 2005, that hubs weren't closed, and taxpayers were left holding the bag for these large terminals that were built with taxpayer money, and then the airlines walked away from their commitments to offer increased services to consumers. So we're looking at the competition and the reduced prices. We're also looking at the reduced services to consumers.
Well, the airlines would probably argue that there would be improved efficiencies, that there would be a cost savings, and that would then be passed on to the consumers. But isn't there also a fear that perhaps if they don't merge, that one of the airlines might go bankrupt or go out of business?
Well, they've both airlines,
Yeah,
American
they're
Airlines,
very bad
and
shape.
US Air, they've both posted record profits.
Okay, so that's not an issue
It's
anymore.
really
then.
not an issue,
Okay.
and the CEO from American Airlines has said that he doesn't believe that the merger is necessary. So we can take that off the table.
Ah.
With regard to reducing the cost for consumers, we look back at the history of the mergers through all different types of airlines. That has never happened.
Ah,
That has never
okay.
happened.
Well, good.
Yeah.
Well, you have gone across the Commonwealth already, and you've had community forums, and I imagine you're going to have more in the future. When you meet with the residents, the citizens of Pennsylvania, what do they suggest that you should be doing? What are some of the ideas that they'd like the Attorney General's office to implement, General?
Well, part of the reason I love Pennsylvania so much is because we say it like it is. So I do appreciate everyone's opinions, and I appreciate the fact that they trust me enough to tell me what their opinions are and feel that they have a voice in their government. They should, and they do. Mostly, we've been talking about guns. We've been talking about drug abuse. I did go to some forums, and the moms wanted to know, some even whose children have died from overdoses, they want to know what we're doing to stop it. Are we just going after the abusers, or are we actually going after the doctors who overprescribe and to get these flood of prescription medications out onto the street? We have a diversion program, and that's all we do in that program as well. We constantly make sure that doctors and healthcare providers are not overprescribing and they are not over-medicating our kids to the point where they're addicted. Because prescription drugs then lead to heroin when the high isn't good enough, and prescription drugs are expensive, heroin is cheap. That is a part of our drug problem. We also go out and try and educate the parents. You have to constantly be keeping up on the newest thing to look in your son or your daughter's backpack for. We tell them this is what it looks like. They're stamping it here in Philadelphia. They may not be stamping it in Pittsburgh. We want you to know that you need to clean out your medicine cabinet because that Percocet you had when you gave birth to your child 10 years ago is still in your cabinet, and they're going to take it. We want them to know there's pill parties. So we want them to better be able to protect their own children, and we want them to know that we're out there doing that as well. So we have a great dialogue back and forth of what we can all do better, because it's all our problem. When we talk about guns, we talked about the Florida loophole. You know, in my first 3 weeks in office, we had this loophole that had been hanging out there for 11 years, and we closed it. And it was something that was poorly drafted 11 years ago, and it allowed Pennsylvanians who weren't able to carry a gun in Pennsylvania to go to Florida and get a gun and then come back to Pennsylvania. Yeah. So we educated the public on what that was all about. They appreciated the information. We go to schools and teach the kids what a straw purchase is. Hardly any child, or even probably most adults, know that straw purchasing, when you go and you are legally capable of buying a gun because you can clear the background check, you go and buy a gun, and then you give that gun or sell that gun to someone who is not able to have a gun, you are now a straw purchaser. And that in Pennsylvania is illegal. We teach the kids about that so that we don't have them become criminals. We don't have them walk into something they don't know what they're doing. We also teach them the other side of it. Hey, once you pass that gun along, it could be used in a shooting. And we've had police officers killed. We've had children killed. You are partly responsible for that, and they don't want that. So education is a huge part of my initiative as well. Our education and outreach program is fantastic, and I think that we're doing a great job. We are going to beef it up tremendously so that we go back to what we were talking about in the first segment. We have no victims.
Good. Well, one of your major lightning rod issues has been the Defense of Marriage Act. And the position that you've taken on it, and I know you've had a lot of opportunities to talk about it, but we'd like to have you explain the Attorney General's position on that,
Yes.
Defense of Marriage.
So as the Attorney General, I have multiple roles, as we've already talked about. I have a role to defend, obey, and protect the Constitution of the United States and of Pennsylvania. That's when I had to raise my right hand on January 15th. That is what I said, and that's what I mean. I also have to enforce all of the laws of this Commonwealth until a court tells me otherwise. I also have to act as the lawyer on behalf of all of the Commonwealth's agencies. So that's what we're talking about. We're talking about acting as a lawyer on behalf of the Commonwealth agency. In this respect, the Governor and the Secretary of Health. If I, as a lawyer, have a fundamental difference with my client, as any lawyer in the Commonwealth must do, we have to withdraw. We cannot represent a client that we have a fundamental difference with. The fundamental difference in this case is the constitutionality versus the unconstitutionality of the DOMA statute. The governor and I disagree. So where we have a disagreement, I cannot represent him. He deserves representation. If I can't give it to him as a lawyer, I'm ethically bound to give it to his lawyers so that they can go into court and they can represent him as he sees fit. But that's what we were talking about. You know, it's some people say it was a personal decision. My personal decision in any case as the Attorney General just doesn't matter, and it will never take a play. It will never have a part in my decisions. I base this decision on the constitutionality of that statute, based upon Pennsylvania Constitution as well as the United States Constitution, as well as the specific provisions in there. In light of the recent Supreme Court decision in Windsor, I have determined that I cannot ethically defend a law that I see as unconstitutional according to the law, not my own personal opinion.
You inherited a lot of cases that were ongoing, just as any new Attorney General would. Were there any high-profile prosecutions that you wish you could go back and have played a major role in and perhaps affected the outcome a little bit better on? Not to mention any in particular, but do you see anything happening that you just wish you would have been there already?
That I wish I would have been at the helm?
Sure.
Well, I think it's no secret that I would have preferred that I was at the helm in the Sandusky case. And the only reason for that is because I am an experienced child abuse prosecutor. We have questions about it, as anybody knows. I've had questions for 2 years, but the people of Pennsylvania have had numerous questions as well. And that's why we started our Sandusky review, our Sandusky investigation into the investigation. And the goal of that is to make sure that children are protected in this Commonwealth. The bottom line is kids need to have the best protection. If we can do better in protecting them with regard to law enforcement, investigation, prosecution, don't we want to? Don't we want to know how to do that? Isn't that our end goal, and shouldn't that be everyone's end goal?
Okay. Well, General, we want to thank you for being with us and our viewers today. We look forward to inviting you back in the near future for a progress report, and we can't thank you enough for everything you've shared with Mara and the viewers today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So you can watch us again on our archives on Voice of PA. You can watch us on YouTube, and you can see us through all of our outlets across the Commonwealth. We'll be with you next week again on Behind the Headlines. We'll see you then.